In December 2011, an opposition member of parliament disseminated disturbing footage of the Attawapiskat First Nation Reserve. The footage depicted hellish scenes of Canadian aboriginals living in third world conditions in sub-zero temperatures. Whilst aid organizations such as the Red Cross attempted to alleviate the suffering of those Canadian natives who had been revealed as lacking access to adequate housing, water and sanitation, there were calls for the Canadian government, led by Stephen Harper, to provide its own substantive material aid for these Indigenous Canadians.
People are living in tents. Do you know how cold it gets up there? In our community, as Aboriginal people or Indigenous peoples, we have the highest suicide rate in Canada. Our kids are dying. They're dying. We don't have resources.
Rather than deploy the necessary food and materials, the neoconservative ruling party deployed third-party financial managers to scrutinize the financial transactions of the Attawapiskat people. This led critics to accuse the Harper government of blaming the victims. The Harper government implied that poor fiscal management was to blame for the lack of infrastructure in the isolated native community. The Aboriginal leadership staunchly disagreed and quickly initiated court proceedings to dispute the colonial government's intrusive actions.
The situation in Attawapiskat is not a mismanagement of funds from Chief and Council. It's a lack of resources and a lack of funds and a lack of honoring of treaties and agreements on the federal government side. That's what it is.
Federal Court Justice Michael Phelan sided with the Aboriginals in their dispute with the Canadian government. He recently ruled that the Harper government's decision to impose third-party managers was unreasonable in all the circumstances and contrary to the law.
If First Nations communities are poor in North America, and the bulk of them are, that's because of the historic dispossession and genocide they faced.
Attawapiskat leaders say they were surprised to see the Canadian judiciary side with Canada's Indigenous peoples for once. Their supporters say they now hope to see a more culturally sensitive and historically informed posture from the federal government. Joshua Blakeney, PressTV, Calgary.